It was 11:47 at night when the lock turned. Not a knock. Not a call. Just the sound of a key sliding into my deadbolt, a key I had never given anyone, and the slow mechanical click of someone letting themselves into the home I had spent 6 years buying. I was still awake, sitting at my kitchen table with a half-eaten bowl of soup and a stack of closing documents I'd been reviewing for the third time that week. Old habit. I'm a paralegal. I read everything twice. My body went still before my brain caught up. I set down my spoon without thinking. The door swung open, and light from the hallway spilled across my floor. My brother stood in the doorway holding a duffel bag. Behind him, my mother, and behind her, rolling a suitcase like she was checking into a hotel, was my brother's girlfriend. Nobody knocked. Nobody called. They just walked in. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped the floor, and the sound made all three of them pause. "What are you doing?" I asked. My brother, Derek, smiled like I'd said something funny. "Relax, Nadia. Mom has a key." I looked at my mother. She was already setting her purse on my counter, already scanning the kitchen like she was calculating what to rearrange first. "I changed the locks 3 months ago," I said. "I never gave you a new key." She turned to look at me, and her expression was one I'd seen my entire life, that patient, practiced disappointment she wore whenever I said something that inconvenienced her. "Your aunt made a copy," she said. "Before you changed them." I didn't say anything for a second. The soup was getting cold. My documents were spread across the table. My home, the one I had bought alone, had saved for a loan, had signed for a loan, was currently being walked into by 3 people who hadn't asked. "You need to leave," I said. My brother laughed. Not a mean laugh, just the easy laugh of someone who has never once believed consequences applied to him. "Come on," he said. "It's almost midnight. We drove 4 hours. I didn't invite you." My mother set her hands on the counter and looked at me the way she always did when she wanted me to feel small. "Nadia, we are your family. This is not a hotel. You don't need an invitation." I picked up my phone from the table. I didn't dial anything. I just held it. "If you don't leave," I said, "I'm calling the police." The room went very quiet. Derek's girlfriend, Amber, a woman I had met exactly twice, looked between all of us with the expression of someone who had expected a warmer welcome. My mother's jaw tightened. Derek's smile finally fell. "You wouldn't do that," he said. I looked at him. "Watch me." They left. Not quietly, not without my mother making sure I knew exactly how ungrateful I was, how cold I had become, how she didn't raise me to treat family this way. She said it all the way down the hall, said it at the elevator, said it one more time from the parking lot, where I could still hear her voice through the window I'd cracked open just enough to make sure they actually got in their car. When the headlights finally pulled out of the lot, I locked my door, sat back down at the table, and stared at my soup. Then I opened my laptop and changed my locks appointment to first thing in the morning. That had been 6 weeks ago, and I should have known, even then, that it wasn't over. 8 months before that night, I had closed on a 2-bedroom condo in Charlotte. 2nd floor, corner unit, windows that faced east so the mornings came in gold instead of gray. I had spent 4 years saving while splitting a studio with a roommate I barely spoke to, eating lunch at my desk, skipping every vacation my coworkers took. I had a spreadsheet. I had a 5-year plan. I had a file folder so organized that my real estate attorney told me, only half joking, that she wished all her clients were paralegals. My family knew I was buying. I told them in March, when I signed the purchase agreement. My mother cried the good kind of crying, she said. My brother told me I was finally growing up. My aunt said she was proud. Everyone was very warm about something that had cost me everything I had. What I didn't know was that they had already started making plans of their own. Derek had been out of work for 7 months by then, not laid off, not downsized. He had quit a perfectly stable logistics job because, as he put it, he didn't see a future there. My mother had been covering his rent since April. Her savings were thinning. And Amber, who was lovely in the way that people are lovely when they want something, had apparently decided that my new 2-bedroom was a more elegant solution than the lease they couldn't afford to renew. I didn't learn any of this until the dinner. It was a Sunday, 5 weeks after I moved in. My mother had suggested we celebrate nothing big, just family, her house, a home-cooked meal. I brought wine. I wore the earrings she gave me for my birthday. I sat down at the table where I had eaten every holiday meal of my life and thought, for approximately 40 minutes, that everything was fine. Then my mother cleared her throat. "We wanted to talk to you about the condo," she said. I put down my fork. Derek and Amber are in a difficult spot right now, she continued. The second bedroom is just sitting there. You work from home 2 days a week. It would barely affect you. I looked at Derek. He was looking at the table. You want them to move in, I said. Temporarily, my mother said. Just until Derek gets back on his feet. A few months. It's my home, I said. It's also a 2-bedroom. She said it like the floor plan itself was an argument, like I owed the square footage to someone. I looked around the table. My aunt was eating. My cousin was checking her phone. No one was looking at me except my mother, who was wearing that expression again, the patient one, the disappointed one, the one that meant she had already decided how this conversation was going to end. No, I said. The word landed like something heavy. Nadia. No, I said again. It's not temporary. There's no such thing as temporary with us. And it is my home. I bought it. I saved for it. I signed for it. The answer is no. I left before dessert. The calls started the next morning. My mother? Twice. My aunt once. Derek sent a text that said only, "You know this isn't right." I read it 3 times and then put my phone face down and went back to work. What I didn't expect was the escalation. By the end of that week, I started hearing things secondhand. That I had become selfish since I bought the condo. That I thought I was better than everyone now. That it was just a room and I was choosing a room over my own brother. My cousin called me on Thursday, not to ask my side, but to tell me that the whole family was upset and maybe I should just think about it. I thought about it. I thought about the 4 years I had spent eating lunch at my desk. I thought about the spreadsheet. I thought about the folder. Then I thought about the fact that I had come home one night 6 weeks ago and found 3 people in my kitchen with a suitcase, and none of them had been invited. On a Friday afternoon, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't listen. I'm glad I did. The voice was calm, professional, and said her name was Carol Simmons from First Alliance Mortgage. She was calling to follow up on a modification request filed on my account. I sat down on the edge of my couch. I had not filed any modification request. I called back immediately. Carol was thorough and careful with her words, the way people are when they know they're delivering news that is going to unsettle someone. What she told me over the next 12 minutes was this. 3 weeks earlier, someone had contacted the mortgage servicer claiming to be me, requesting information about adding a co-borrower to my account. The request had been flagged because the caller failed the security verification. No changes had been made. But the attempt was on record. Do you have any idea who might have tried this? Carol asked. I did. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat on my couch for a long time, not moving. Outside my east-facing windows, the afternoon light was starting to go orange. It was very quiet. My mother had helped me during the buying process. I had asked her to. She was better with paperwork than I gave her credit for, she'd said, and I was working 60-hour weeks during the final stretch before closing. I had given her the name of my loan servicer so she could forward a document. Just once. Just one document. Apparently, that had been enough to know where to call. I am a paralegal. I have spent 6 years watching people make the mistake of trusting the wrong person with one small thing. I had believed I was too careful to make that mistake myself. It turns out you can know exactly how traps work and still step into one, if the person setting it loves you. I called my friend Priya that evening. We had worked together for 3 years before she moved to a firm in Raleigh, and she was the kind of person who answered the phone on the second ring and said, "Talk to me," instead of "hello." I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which meant she understood it was serious. When I finished, she said, "Document everything, tonight, before you call anyone in your family." I already had my laptop open. I spent the next 2 hours building a file. Every text, every voicemail, every email. Screenshots of my brother's messages. A screenshot of my mother's phone number in my call log from that first night. The voicemail from Carol at First Alliance. The dates. The sequence. Everything in order, everything labeled. At the end of it, I had a folder on my desktop titled Record. It felt both clinical and necessary, like a deposition I was preparing against people I used to eat Sunday dinner with. I didn't sleep well, but I slept. The following week, I called the mortgage servicer myself and placed a third-party restriction on my account. No one could call and request information or modifications without a verbal password I set. I also put a fraud alert on my credit file, all 3 bureaus, same day. Then I called my HOA and updated the emergency contact, removing my mother's name, which I had apparently listed during move-in without fully thinking through what I was doing. Small things. But small things were how it had all started. On Wednesday, my mother called. I answered. I heard you changed something with the mortgage, she said. Her voice was steady, but only barely. I updated my security settings, I said. Why would you do that? Because someone called pretending to be me and tried to add a co-borrower. Silence. Mom, I said, I know it was you. Or it was someone you asked. Either way, I know. More silence. Then, I was trying to help. Help me do what? Derek needs stability, Nadia. He needs to find a job, I said. And you need to stop trying to use my home as a solution to a problem that isn't mine. He's your brother. He's an adult, I said. And I'm done. I hung up. She called back 4 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. The next blow came from a direction I wasn't expecting. My aunt, my mother's older sister, the one who had been at that Sunday dinner, the one who had barely looked up from her plate, called me on a Thursday morning. I picked up because I thought maybe, for once, someone in my family wanted to ask instead of tell. Your mother's devastated, she said. Okay, I said. You can't do this to her, Nadia. She raised you by herself. Everything she does for this family. She tried to add someone to my mortgage without my consent, I said. That is not something she did for me. She was trying to help Derek. Then she can help Derek with her own assets. My aunt made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a scoff. You've gotten very hard. I thought about that word, hard. I had heard it before in various forms: cold, difficult, too independent, too serious. I had spent a long time believing it was a flaw. I've gotten very clear, I said. There's a difference. She didn't call back. What followed was 3 weeks of pressure so routine it almost became boring. Text messages I didn't reply to. A card in the mail, an actual card, handwritten, from my mother saying she hoped I would find it in my heart to reconsider. My cousin posting something vague on Instagram about family loyalty that everyone in my family liked and I'm certain was aimed at me. Derek calling once from a number I didn't recognize, and when I answered and realized it was him, hanging up without saying anything. I kept adding to the file. Every attempt, every date, every message. Priya checked in every few days. She had spoken to one of the partners at her firm informally, she told me, and if it ever came to anything legal, I had a strong record. I wasn't sure I wanted it to come to anything legal. I wasn't sure I wanted it to come to anything at all. But I kept documenting, because I had learned from 6 years of watching other people's crises that the moment you stop writing things down is usually the moment things get worse. They got worse. On a Tuesday evening, I came home from the office to find my front door ajar. Not broken, not forced. Just open the way a door is when someone has a key and isn't trying to hide it. I stood in the hallway for a full 30 seconds before I went inside. My training, such as it is, told me to assess before I moved. The lights were on, the television was on, and in my living room, on my couch, sitting with the particular ease of someone who believed she had every right to be there, was Amber. She looked up when I walked in. She had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Derek wanted me to wait here, she said. He'll be right up. I set down my bag on the floor because my hands needed something to do. How did you get in? I said. She held up a key. I stared at it. My key. The one I had changed after that first night. The one I had paid a locksmith to replace at 7 in the morning because I hadn't wanted to wait a single day longer than necessary. Where did you get that? I said. Your mom gave it to us, Amber said simply, as if this were a normal sentence. I picked up my bag. I walked to my door. I held it open. Get out, I said. She opened her mouth. Please get out of my home right now, I said, or I'm going to call the police and report an unauthorized entry, and I'm going to do it while you're still sitting on my couch. She left. Derek showed up 12 minutes later, while I was still standing at my door with my phone in my hand. I watched him come down the hallway. He stopped when he saw my face. She shouldn't have let herself in, he said, like he was conceding a minor point. Where did Mom get a new key? I asked. He didn't answer right away, which told me everything. She had a copy made, I said, before I changed the lock, and she gave it to you. He shifted his weight. Nadia, come on. We just needed somewhere to stay for a few days while we figured things out. You have the room, you have the space. I don't understand why you're making this. This is my home, I said. My voice was very flat. It is legally mine. It is titled in my name. I pay every dollar of the mortgage from my own account. I have never asked you or Mom or anyone in this family for a single cent toward it. And 3 times now, 3 separate times, someone in our family has walked into it or tried to access it without my permission. I am done explaining why that's not okay. He looked at me for a long moment. You used to be different, he said. No, I said. I used to be easier to take advantage of. That's not the same thing. He left. I called a locksmith before he reached the elevator. That night, I called Priya. I need to make this stop, I said. Then make it stop, she said. What does that look like? She was quiet for a moment. It looks like you filing a formal complaint with your mortgage servicer about the attempted modification. It looks like a certified letter to your mother and your brother, stating clearly that any further unauthorized entry or attempted access to your property will result in legal action. And it looks like you being prepared to follow through. And if they push back, then you follow through, she said. Nadia, I've watched you prepare airtight case files for other people for years. You already have everything you need. You're just not used to using it for yourself. She was right. I knew she was right. I just hadn't wanted to need it. The certified letters went out on a Thursday. My mother's, my brother's, one to my aunt who had facilitated the key copy. Formal, measured, drafted in the language I used professionally. I did not write them angry. I wrote them accurate. There is a difference, and the difference matters when documents become evidence. My mother called 12 times in 2 days. I let them go to voicemail. I listened to each one and added the timestamps to my file. On the 3rd day, she stopped calling. The silence that followed was not comfortable. It had weight. The kind you feel in your chest when something that used to make noise goes suddenly still. I went to work. I ate dinner. I watched the evening light move across my floor and thought about what it meant to live somewhere that was genuinely yours, not in theory, not on paper, but in the daily practice of locking the door and knowing it would stay locked. 6 days later, there was a knock. An actual knock, which was new. I looked through the peephole. My mother was standing alone in the hallway. No suitcase, no Derek, no one behind her. Just her, in the coat she wore to church, holding her purse with both hands. I opened the door. She looked older than she had a few months ago. I noticed that first, before anything else, the way she was holding herself. Slightly inward, like she was bracing for something. I'm not here to fight, she said. Okay, I said. I didn't move back to let her in. She looked past me into the apartment, just for a second, and then back at my face. I got the letter. I know. It scared me, she said, the legal language. I didn't think you would. She stopped, started again. I didn't think it would go this far. You gave someone a key to my home twice, I said, and someone called my mortgage servicer pretending to be me. It was always going to go this far. Her eyes filled. And I recognized this too, the tears that came right on time, that had always arrived precisely when they were most useful. I had spent 31 years softening at exactly this moment. My body still wanted to. The instinct was so old it felt like gravity. I let myself feel it, and then I stayed where I was. I love Derek, she said. He's struggling. I know what you wanted, I said. You wanted me to fix it. You've always wanted me to fix it. When he quit his job, when he got into the accident, when he needed the money for the deposit on the last apartment, it was always me. And I did it, Mom. I helped every time, but this is different. This is my home. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So that's it? You're done with us? I'm not done, I said. I'm just not available for this anymore. There's a difference. She looked at me for a long moment. I couldn't read her expression completely. It was somewhere between grief and something harder. You've changed, she said. Yeah, I said. I finally stopped apologizing for it. She left without another word. I watched her go down the hallway, her footsteps quiet on the carpet, her posture smaller than I remembered. I felt something watching her go, not satisfaction, not grief exactly, something more like clarity. The specific sadness of seeing something for what it always was instead of what you needed it to be. I closed the door, locked it. Then I went to my kitchen, made tea, and sat at the table where my documents still lived in a neat, organized stack. Priya called that evening. How are you doing? She asked. She came, I said. And I didn't let her in. I paused. Not the physical door, the other kind. Priya was quiet for a moment. That's harder, she said. A lot harder, I agreed. But you did it. I looked around my apartment. The east-facing windows had gone dark, but the lamps made everything warm. My books were on the shelves in the order I put them. My kitchen smelled like the tea I'd brewed. Everything was exactly where I had left it, which was exactly where I had put it, because it was mine. I did it, I said. The formal complaint to the mortgage servicer was resolved within 2 weeks. The attempted modification was flagged in my file, the security protocol I had set was confirmed, and the servicer sent me a written summary of the incident. I printed it and added it to the folder. The folder stayed in my desk drawer after that. I didn't need to look at it often. It was just their evidence not of what they had done to me, but of what I had finally stopped allowing. My brother texted once, about a month later. Not an apology, not an explanation, just, "I hope you're good." I looked at it for a while, then typed back, "You too." And meant it, in the clean, uncomplicated way you can mean something when you've stopped expecting more from it than it can give. My mother didn't contact me again for almost 2 months. When she finally did, it was a short voicemail, just her voice, a little uncertain, saying she'd seen that the dogwood trees near her neighborhood were blooming and she thought I might want to know because I used to love them when I was little. It was such a small thing, I almost didn't know what to do with it. I sat with it for a day, then I called her back. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing in particular. No property, no Derek, no keys. Just the dogwoods, and a recipe she'd been trying, and a coworker of mine she'd always liked. It was careful and a little stilted and not at all like before. But before was what I was moving away from. I don't know what will become. I don't know if the distance will hold or shift or someday close. I know that I am not waiting for it to fix me, and I am not the one responsible for fixing it. What I know is this. On a Tuesday morning in March, I woke up in the apartment I bought with my own savings, in a city I chose, in a life I built from a spreadsheet and 4 years of eating lunch at my desk and a file folder so organized it impressed my real estate attorney. I made coffee. I sat in the light coming through my east-facing windows. And I didn't spend a single second bracing for a knock at the door. That's not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. What happened to Nadia didn't start the night her brother walked through her door with a suitcase. It started years earlier. In every moment she said yes when she meant no. In every time she covered someone else's emergency without being asked. In every bill she paid quietly, so the family wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable. The midnight entry was just the moment the pattern finally showed its face clearly enough that she couldn't look away from it. That's how these things work. The people who take from you rarely announce it. They build slowly, borrowing a little trust here, a small favor there, until one day they're standing in your living room like they belong there because in their version of events, they do. Nadia had spent years being the reliable one, the one who fixed things, the one who never caused problems, and without realizing it, she had trained the people around her to expect that she always would be. The turning point wasn't anger, it was clarity. There's a real difference between those two things, and it matters. Anger burns fast and leaves damage. Clarity is quieter, and it lasts. When Nadia opened her door at midnight and said, "You need to leave," she wasn't reacting, she was deciding. When she stayed up that same night building a documentation file instead of sending a furious text, she was choosing precision over emotion. When she drafted the certified letters in formal, measured language instead of accusations, she was using the one tool she had spent 6 years sharpening in her professional life and finally turning it toward herself. That's the thing about integrity. It isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you practice, and practice builds it stronger. Every time Nadia chose documentation over drama, every time she stayed quiet on social media while her family performed their version of the story, every time she answered a question with a fact instead of a feeling, she was doing the harder, smarter thing. And the harder, smarter thing compounded. The mortgage servicer took her seriously because she had records. The attorney had something to work with because she had records. The case closed cleanly because she had records. The people who tried to take what she built did not plan carefully. They acted on entitlement, the belief that what belongs to someone who works hard is somehow available to those who don't. Entitlement doesn't hold up against evidence. It never does. It relies entirely on the other person being too tired, too guilty, or too afraid of conflict to push back. The moment Nadia stopped being that person, their leverage disappeared completely. And her mother at the door near the end, that visit meant something important. Not because it was an apology, and not because it changed anything immediately, but because it confirmed what Nadia had suspected. The people who had been treating her home as a resource had never actually stopped to see her as a person. When she finally made that impossible to ignore, something in the dynamic shifted. Maybe permanently, maybe not. But the shift was real. She didn't win by being cruel. She didn't win by cutting ties dramatically or saying the most devastating thing she could think of. She won by being consistent, by being documented, and by deciding clearly, without apology, that the life she had built was hers to protect. That decision, made and remade every time someone pushed, was the whole thing. That was what held.